Alright, reflection time. It's took me all day. No, wrong thing. And the reason it took me all day. Ah, fuck, I forgot to do something. Yeah, come on, just turn this down a little bit. Too much. Okay, that should be good. Um, the reason it took me all day to get this done is because the compilation video took all day to publish and edit and stuff. Yeah. So, anyways, season one of The Walking Dead. Uh, let's now remember, there's gonna be spoilers for not just season one of The Walking Dead,
That just made my day.
but also for the coming seasons. So I got like stuff I'm going to talk about mostly, because there's gonna be spliced up ideas.
Hey out there, we're under attack, so get your ass here, now!
We're
Yeah,
coming to help.
all the way over
Hang
there.
tight.
Trying to help everyone's just gonna get us killed.
So
Order. Close by.
what is it that I want to say here? So let's see. Let's start with the structure and how that's important to the reason why some things worked and didn't. So, the way the seasons are structured is the first season sets up how the characters meet and how they're going in like their personalities. This is clearly visible in both first and second season, where you may most of the characters you're gonna go along with, and all the rest of the season. I mean, look at season two. The season two is a great example of the specific structure that the seasons go through. But the first episode sets up the characters nicely. Then the second episode is just forwards that plot, gets them from place A to place B. Then the third episode is where all the action happens. And remember, in the third episode of the second season, um, Carver comes and shoots a bunch of people. And that's also where, no, that's in the second episode. The third episode actually is where you escape from Carver's compound and go into the woods, and that's where a bunch of people die still. Well, and then the fourth episode, this is where it really gets into the nitty gritty of it.
All right,
The
folks. We've got the gear.
oh, good.
To rule this town, we need training. School is in session.
So, the fourth episode is what I would like to call the interlude episode. Not much happens. It just the reason the fourth episode is one of the most forgotten, but one of the most important is because of what it does. Not much happens in it, but what does happen sets up the actions of the most important episode, the fifth one. It takes us out from the most dramatic episode and puts us or one of the more dramatic episodes, and puts us directly, and gives us a break, and puts us directly into,
In this experiment has been noted. Very well. Isabella, let's reset and try again.
puts us directly into one of the more important episodes, almost immediately. But because you have that huge interload,
Watch yourself.
because of that huge interload,
Oh no. Someone's in real trouble.
interload between episodes, it really just shows. God, I am all scrambled today. But you have to give me a second to regather my thoughts. But it makes it to where it doesn't overwhelm you, but it still like gives you that buffer. You can see this in the Hunger Games. They audibly mention this. where after Fox Nixon's death, as Katniss called him, they give the victor, the tributes, a second to, and the audience a second to breathe before forcing more fighting to happen. So this is what I'm talking about. Why the fourth episode is important, because it allows for that interlude to happen, so that you can breathe a little bit and be like, oh, the storm is past, and then immediately hits you with the action of the fifth episode. Again, this is most shown by the fourth season, where, and it sets up what happens in that episode too, where, I mean, the fourth episode of the second season, the characters go in. They have just escaped from Carver's. They're walking through the woods, just trying to regather themselves. Well, immediately into the fourth episode,
That's not going to fit.
they meet Arvo, and Rebecca's having a baby, and all this stuff. Well, none of that really comes to fruition until the fifth episode, where that's when Arvo attacks, and it makes sense why he's there now. And Rebecca dies because of the baby, causing chaos in the people. You can clearly see what's going on there. It's not as shown in the fifth season, in the first season, I mean, because you go to you go to Crawford in the first season, which you can clearly see why the fourth season isn't as good, the second season isn't as good as the first season, because of this, because it really is, there's just a bunch of periods of nothing really happening. And I mean, like, the second episode, they just kind of walk into the woods. So the first episode introduces the characters. Second episode, it reinforces those introductions. And then third episode, hits us with, like, big revelations. Fourth episode gives us an interlude. And then the fifth episode hits us with the main dramatic build-up that has been happening in the fourth episode. Now, what does this have to do? What does this have to do with the actual, like, overarching story of all the seasons, the whole series? Well, the reason I think the third season, one of the reasons the third season didn't do as well as the first and second season is because of it acts in the same way. They ditch the structure in between the second and third season. They ditch the structure, and they still introduce the characters in the first, but that's basically all they do. They don't really fulfill on the second, because they're just doing more like introduction to characters in the second, because you have a lot of action still in the first episode. Because what they're doing is they're introducing the new main character, Javier, or one of the new main characters, Javier. Clem is still the main character, but Javi is just a playable character there. So, by doing this, they throw out the structure. But if you look at it, it still is the structure. But not within the episodes, but within the seasons themselves. First season introduces the world and the characters and who Clem is as a person, or who she can be. Then, oh man. And then the second season makes release on that, privies us up. Privies what they've reinforces. I don't know why I couldn't get that word out. Reinforces what they said in the first season. So, and exposes on that too. Then the third season is an interlude, but also builds up to the climax of the fourth season. And so that's another reason why I think that the third season didn't do as well as the other seasons, because it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be an interlude where not much happens. I mean, yeah, a lot happened, but for an entire season, it's lacking in content. And that's why I think why. Another reason is probably the graphics weren't as good because they tried doing a realistic view with they tried doing high realism with high comic comicality, which didn't work. What I think that's the reason why I think the fourth season is better with its graphics because they actually pulled that off well with um medium realism and a medium graphics because everything in moderation and you've got to compromise at points, you know? But that's why I don't hate the third season,
It's Tracy Huerta calling from
the third season as much as others do, because it's just an interlude for what's to come in the fourth season. And this is most clearly seen at the end of the third season, where there's a screen after you've played through the game with as Javi, where all your actions come together to shape Clementine, and it says it up, and the one thing it says is who your Clementine has become, and that's where it really like shows you truly who Clementine has become, mostly, but what your actions have come through, and then you get reinforcement of that in the fourth season, where it then double hits it, if you know what I mean. So I don't think that the fourth season is necessarily, or the third season is necessarily good, but I don't think it's bad either. Because
There's no way they didn't hear that.
yeah, the graphics are like dog shit. I ain't gonna lie.
Hey,
The graph
I suppose it could be worse.
the graphics are pretty bad.
I'm a little full at the moment.
But the graphics aren't really what matter at that point because it's about Clem's journey. That's why you don't control her. If you control her, then it wouldn't matter. Because like yeah, of course that's who she became. That's who I've been playing her as. But because you control Javi, it gives us an outside perspective on who she is as well. So that's why I think the third season is important. It's important, not even if more important than the first season. I'm not saying it's better than the first season. I'm just saying it could be classified as more important than the first season. Because the second season is really where she gets built up as a person. And because you're playing as they're there. And then whatever decision you made as in Clementine in the second season really pushes forward that narrative of who she becomes in the third season. But what does this have to do with the first season at all? Because I'm not talking really about the first season. What it has to do with the first season is that you can see these ties even in the first season. She doesn't, because as Lee, you basically raise her to become who she is at the end. You plant those ideas, and then whether or not you fulfill on those in the and whether or not you fulfill on those in the second season is up to you or not. That's why they give you a bunch of traits and things she learned after the at the end of the third season. Which is what the same thing they do for at the end of the fourth season, is they do that for AJ. You can clearly see that the fourth season was supposed to be the end season, the last season, the final season. Now, of course, they couldn't let that go, and they had to continue it for some god-awful reason, and then screw it all up with those damn books. But you can clearly see that the people who made the third season cared, and they just got a lot of flack for having to do the hard season. And probably the hardest season to write. Because you can't do Clementine, but you've still got to show that she's aging, that she's growing. And yeah, they threw basically out the endings. I ain't gonna lie. They basically just threw the endings out, which sucks, because I really like Kenny, and they basically just said, fuck them. But another reason that I think it failed is because it gives you the illusion of choice. It doesn't really give you your choices because every single
I'm
like
exhausted. I need
pathway you choose still ends up with the same spot. But that's because you're not playing as Clementine there. You're playing as Javier. Javi's destiny was really predetermined because he's not the main character. So he wouldn't really have a different story there. He was always supposed to become the leader of Richmond. But Clementine doesn't change either because you still need her to go and get AJ to forward the plot of the overarching story. If she doesn't have AJ, then there's no really reason for you to continue that story because AJ was supposed to be the continuation of that story.
No room for that.
So that's why I believe it failed, but I also believe that
Sorry.
because it failed, it succeeded. It succeeded in its goal, but failed in people because they went into it expecting another Walking Dead game that had more characters and all this stuff, but instead they got a game where instead of those characters, you get the like second half or a worser version of it, which is why I don't necessarily like it, but I also don't think it's the worst thing that could have happened. You know? And we can clearly see that's not the worst thing that could have happened because of what does happen in this to the story after the 4th season. Could have been a lot worse. Fucking Greenland. Why this shit? Nah, that's gonna piss me off for a while. But the first story really does reinforce and give you a reason to care about Clementine. But that's also why you don't play as Clementine in the first season. Because, yeah. Why would you need to play as Clementine? You need to learn who she is first. And the best way to do that is by playing as somebody else first. So I don't think that it was necessarily a failure, but I also don't think it was necessarily a success. Because it does deliver on what it was promising to do. But it does it in a way, it does it in such a way that it doesn't feel like it does. But like I said, I can't really talk about much when it comes to the first season because you really need to play the other seasons
Miles away must have heard that.
to know what to talk about, to reflect on it. So that's why I decided to mostly talk about its impact on other seasons comparatively. But so I understand why people don't like the 3rd season. I don't necessarily like it. I don't think it's all that good, but it was still important to the plot of the story in comparison to maybe like the 2nd season.
I think I just got some unwelcome attention.
But I'm not a story writer, so that's just what my opinion is on how important this stuff was. This is more of thoughts about the coming seasons, but that's why like the fucking books don't make any sense because they have nothing to do with the story. They kind of are completely of their own thing, like a separate timeline almost.
That's pretty heavy.
They kind of just fuck off with the story.
Wish I had room for that.
Jeez, that's a lot of food. But those are the thoughts that I don't necessarily want you to go into the 2nd season with, but I want you to think of as I'm describing what's going on, and because that's what I'm thinking, and so that maybe that'll help you understand what I'm thinking as we play, or as I play, and say stuff. But so again, the graphics. That's why I want to at least play the 3rd season in definitive edition with you guys, because the graphics were just so bad. You can really see that with like David's hair and stuff like that. I think like one of the only characters it really works with is maybe Clementine, but she just looks so smooth as well. Clementine looks really smooth, like her face and stuff. She almost like doesn't look human. And then it works well with Javi. Oh, but here's another thing: is there's a huge glitch with the baseball bat with Javi, which I will point out as it happens, because it's pretty funny though. Even though it's really annoying, because at some point you have to like restart the whole game because of it. But so yeah, those are my thoughts on the first season. It was sad, but I don't think it was really meant to go on for as long as it did. I think kind of around the fifth episode is where they were like, yeah, we need to continue this
I
story
think I'm done searching here.
because it really felt like, damn, that did a lot of damage. It really felt like it was supposed to be concluded there because of stuff and stuff, but I really can't say much else because once we have more ideas to go on and the plot gets deeper, what I will say is that the second season is really, really grim, like super grim, much grimmer than its predecessor or really any of the other seasons.
Oops. That was loud.
Like the fourth season's kind of dark, but like holy shit, one of the first things you do, like I think like the first thing you do as Clem is either leave Crystal behind or like maybe get yourself killed there. And then like the second thing you do is you kill a dog or not. And it's just like and then the third thing is that you have to then sew your arm together with fishing wire. It's pretty bad.
Can't carry that. No room for that.
So, yeah. Now remember you shouldn't have watched this if you didn't want spoilers, but you did anyways probably, so it's on you. So yeah, let's just get straight into the second season and the next episode. So yeah, bye.